that we've had 10 million illegal crossings in 3 years, that we've had pushing 300,000 Americans dead from opioid overdose. We're losing our country down there. And the man responsible for executing that policy is Alejandro Mayorkas. He will be impeached through this committee this day.
Chairman.
When I first came to Congress, Mr. Chairman, I had the great honor of befriending the gentleman from Alaska, the Dean of the House, Don Young. I had the privilege of sitting next to Don for 5 years before his death. Don told me when I first came to Congress, he said, "Clay, if you want to understand this body, you have to understand a simple fact." He said the Republican Party is primarily a party of businessmen. The Democrat Party is primarily a party of attorneys. That's being shown quite clearly today. So let this old street cop give some of our fancy attorneys on the other side of the aisle a little history lesson. When it was first proposed to limit impeachments in the American Constitution to treason and bribery alone, Virginia Delegate George Mason pointed out that Hastings, who was being impeached at the time by Parliament, is not guilty of treason. Mason questioned the wisdom of limiting impeachment to those two offenses, arguing that treason is defined in the Constitution, as defined in the Constitution, would not reach many great and dangerous offenses, that attempts to subvert the Constitution may not be treason as defined, and that it's the more necessary to extend the power of impeachments. Mason then moved that the convention add maladministration to the impeachment power. Eldridge Gerry seconded the motion. Then James Madison argued that the term maladministration, which deviated from the more commonly recognized phrase high crimes and misdemeanors, was so vague a term that it would be the equivalent to a tenure during pleasure of the Senate. Quote of Madison. Governor Morris agreed with Madison, at which point Mason withdrew his motion and substituted as grounds for impeachment, quote, bribery and high crimes and misdemeanors. Bribery and other high crimes and misdemeanors. The motion carried without any further discussion of the new phrase, which ultimately became part of the Constitution. Here's the bottom line. As historians summarize, the actions of the delegates of the Constitutional Convention stated that, in summary, through the early debates, every speaker referred to neglect of duty and misconduct in office as impeachable offenses. And after Madison objected to the vagueness of the proposed impeachment clause, Mason then moved to add high crimes and misdemeanors. This passed 8-3 and became the orthodox phraseology. The vote in favor of the compromise motion suggests that the delegates understood that the new terms included neglect of duty. The addition of misdemeanors to the list of offenses meant that the House of Representatives was permitted to charge officials with misuse of power and neglect of duty. As has been quoted by many scholars, specifically, the term misdemeanors in its original meaning carried with it less the sense of a smaller or less serious criminal law offense, which would be today's common usage of the word, and more the broader sense of misconduct or misbehavior, literally of not demeaning oneself properly, misdemeaning in the exercise of an official capacity or position. The breadth of the constitutional language employed as a standard for impeachment thus plainly embraces a range of congressional judgment extending beyond bare criminality as to what types of culpable official misconduct so amount to a betrayal of trust, responsibility, duty, or integrity as to warrant removal from office. And that's where we are today.
Will the gentleman...
My colleagues, no, I will not. You didn't yield to me, my brother.
I don't
My colleagues across the aisle seem to say that it's acceptable that we've had 10 million illegal crossings in 3 years, that we've had pushing 300,000 Americans dead from opioid overdose. We're losing our country down there. And the man responsible for executing that policy is Alejandro Mayorkas. He will be impeached through this committee this day. Mr. Chairman, I yield.